They treated me like I was just their housekeeper, even though I wore their ring. Every holiday, at their beloved mountain lodge, I was the one setting the table, washing their clothes, serving their meals. The worst part. My mother-in-law called me the cute maid with a wedding band. But everything changed the day I decided I wasn't just someone to clean up after them anymore. And what happened next shocked them all. If you've ever felt invisible or undervalued, this story is for you. Hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about standing up and turning the tables. My name is Natalie. I'm 27 years old, and I married Brian, a gentle, dreamy man who captured my heart from the moment we met in college. He was studying environmental science, passionate about nature and protecting the world we live in. I was a graphic designer, balancing school and part-time work to support myself. From the very beginning, Brian and I connected on a deep level. We shared dreams, hopes, and a vision for a future together. Brian's family owned a beautiful mountain lodge nestled in the Rockies. It was an enchanting place, surrounded by towering pine trees, snow-capped peaks, and crisp mountain air. The lodge had been in his family for generations, a treasured retreat where they spent holidays and made lifelong memories. I pictured us building our own memories there, cozy weekends by the fire, laughter echoing through the wooden halls, and endless hikes under blue skies. But from the moment I joined Brian's family, I felt out of place. His mother, Diane, was a proud traditional woman who held tightly to old ideas about family roles and hierarchy. She never hid her disdain for me. Though Brian was kind and loving, Diane's coldness cut deep. She had a sharp tongue and a way of making me feel invisible while smiling politely. At every family gathering, Diane assigned me chores, setting the table, doing dishes, preparing meals as if I were hired help rather than a daughter-in-law. I remember one holiday when she joked openly, calling me the cute maid with a wedding band, and everyone laughed. The word stung, but no one challenged her. Brian looked uncomfortable but remained silent. I tried to ignore the humiliation, telling myself that family dynamics were complicated and that things would improve. But each visit to the lodge reminded me that I wasn't truly accepted. Invitations to family photos never came my way. Conversations hushed when I entered the room. The warmth I imagined was replaced by icy glances and subtle exclusions. Brian's family seemed to follow Diane's lead, treating me like an outsider. I was expected to work behind the scenes, to serve, to be unseen. The man I married loved me, but his family's rejection was like a heavy shadow that darkened every visit. The worst moments were when I was excluded from moments that should have included me. One Christmas dinner, I wasn't even mentioned in the family toast. It was as if I didn't exist. A painful reminder that no matter how much I loved Brian, his family refused to see me as anything more than a servant. Each time I looked in the mirror after those holidays, I asked myself a question that broke my heart. Am I his wife, or just the housekeeper? The lodge, which was supposed to be a symbol of love and family, became a place of isolation and pain. I felt trapped, stuck between my devotion to Brian and the cold reality of his family's disdain. Despite the rejection, I loved Brian deeply and hoped for a day when his family would accept me. But the longer I stayed, the more I realized that change wouldn't come from outside, it had to come from me. I began to build my own life outside the lodge, pursuing my passion for design and dreaming of independence. The mountain lodge remained a painful reminder of everything I wasn't until the day I decided I would no longer play the role they forced on me. From the very first family vacation to the mountain lodge, I knew things wouldn't be easy. What was supposed to be a joyful getaway quickly turned into a daily reminder of my place in Brian's family, or rather, the lack of it. The moment we arrived, Diane, Brian's mother, made it clear who wore the crown in that household, and it definitely wasn't me. The lodge was buzzing with relatives, laughter, and holiday cheer. But for me, it felt more like a workplace. While others relaxed by the fireplace or explored the nearby trails, I was busy setting the table, washing dishes, or folding laundry. Brian tried to include me, but his mother's icy stare always cut our moment short. I remember one morning vividly. The sun was just rising behind the mountains, casting golden light across the lodge's wooden porch. I was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, rushing to get everything ready before the family came downstairs. Diane appeared suddenly, a sly smile on her lips. "Natalie, dear, could you make sure the linens are fresh? And don't forget to polish the silverware. We wouldn't want anything less than perfect for our guests." Her tone was sweet, but there was an unmistakable command in her voice. That's when it hit me. I wasn't family. I was their help. It was more than just chores. Diane would make snide remarks in front of everyone, like the time she called me the cute maid with a wedding band. Everyone laughed, but I felt like shrinking into the floor. Brian looked away, clearly uncomfortable, but he didn't say a word. At the family photo session, the exclusion became even more blatant. Diane whispered to the others, "We can't include Natalie. It would ruin the color balance." I stood to the side, watching the smiles and poses, feeling like a ghost. The sting of rejection was sharp and unforgiving. That night, I sat alone by the window, staring out at the snow-covered peaks. The lodge was beautiful, but inside I felt hollow. The cold rejection wrapped around me like the winter air outside. I asked myself, was I really his wife? Or just a housekeeper in their eyes? The tension in the family wasn't just about me. Brian's older sister, Julia, barely hid her disdain. She would roll her eyes when I entered the room, whispering sarcastic comments to her friends. Even Brian's father, who was usually quiet and reserved, avoided making eye contact. The message was clear: I wasn't welcome. At dinner, I was expected to serve, not sit. While others shared stories and laughter, I cleared plates and wiped tables. Brian tried to catch my eye across the room, silently apologizing, but the damage was done. I felt invisible. One afternoon, while helping prepare for a family hike, Diane cornered me. "Natalie, you do understand your role here, don't you? We appreciate your effort, but don't forget this is our family's place." Her words were sharp, cutting through me like ice. I nodded silently, fighting tears. Inside, I was breaking apart. I loved Brian, but his family's cruelty was unbearable. The lodge, once a symbol of hope and love, had become a prison of humiliation. Each visit chipped away at my confidence and sense of belonging. I confided in Brian about how I felt, hoping he'd stand up for me, but he was torn loyal to his mother, yet loving me deeply. The tension between us grew, the silence louder than any argument. I realized that to protect my heart, I needed to build my own strength. It was during one of those lonely nights that I made a decision. I wouldn't let their judgment define me. I would find a way to reclaim my power, not through confrontation, but by creating a life where I was in control. That decision sparked a fire inside me. I started sketching ideas for my own business, combining my love for design with the dream of independence. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined. The mountain lodge would no longer be a symbol of rejection. It would become a milestone in my journey to freedom. The following years after that fateful decision were some of the hardest I had ever faced. The pain of rejection from Brian's family didn't fade. It only grew sharper as the truth became undeniable. My life, which I had hoped to build together with Brian in harmony, had fractured beyond repair. Brian and I tried to make our marriage work. We clung to the love that had brought us together, but the constant pressure from his family was a looming storm we couldn't escape. Every holiday, every family event was another battleground. Diane's disdain deepened. Julia's whispered insults grew louder, and Brian's silence felt like betrayal. One Christmas, things reached a breaking point. We were all gathered at the lodge, or rather the place that had become a battlefield disguised as a family home. Diane announced loudly that I wouldn't be joining the family gift exchange because someone needed to be responsible for the cleanup. The room fell silent. All eyes on me. I wanted to disappear. I remember standing by the window watching snowflakes drift lazily to the ground, feeling tears sting my eyes. Brian approached me, his voice low and pained. "Natalie, I'm sorry. I wish things were different, but apologies couldn't erase the humiliation." That night, I sat in the dark, feeling completely alone. I questioned everything. My worth, my marriage, my future. Was I truly just the housekeeper to this family? Did Brian even see me as his wife anymore? The emotional toll was crushing. I felt myself unraveling, caught between love and rejection, hope and despair. The weight of loneliness settled deep in my bones. Every moment at the lodge was a reminder that I was not enough. One day, during a particularly bitter argument, Brian said something that shattered me. "Maybe your family would accept you more than mine ever will." The words cut deeper than any insult from Diane. They were a confession of hopelessness, and I felt the fragile threads holding us together snap. I knew then that I had to leave. Walking away from Brian was the hardest decision I've ever made. It felt like tearing my own heart out, but staying meant losing myself completely. I packed my bags, left the lodge behind, and stepped into the unknown with nothing but a fierce determination to rebuild my life. The first months after the separation were chaotic. I struggled with self-doubt, loneliness, and the sting of failure. But slowly, I began to channel my pain into something productive. I returned to my passion, interior design, with a focus on vacation homes and lodges. It was more than a career. It was a way to reclaim my identity. I threw myself into my work building a small business from scratch. It wasn't easy, long hours, financial struggles, and the constant shadow of my past. But with every project, I grew stronger and more confident. I found joy in creating beautiful spaces that brought people comfort and peace, things I had longed for in my own life. Meanwhile, Brian's family continued their annual visits to the lodge. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Diane still referred to me as the ex-maid behind my back. Julia would smirk when my name came up, but I no longer let their words define me. Years passed, and my business flourished. I made valuable connections in the resort community, learned to negotiate, and gained a reputation for excellence. I saved every penny dreaming of one day turning the tables, and then opportunity came knocking. A major shareholder in the Mountain Lodge was looking to sell her shares. Without hesitation, I saw my chance. I pooled my resources, secured a loan, and purchased a significant stake in the lodge, the very place that had once been a symbol of my pain and rejection. When I became a part owner, it was more than a financial investment. It was a statement. I was no longer invisible. I had power, influence, and control. At first, Brian's family was shocked. They hadn't expected me to rise, let alone return in a position of authority. Diane's polite mask slipped, revealing anger and disbelief. Julia's sneers grew more venomous, but I was ready. Using my stake, I negotiated the right to manage guest lists and set house rules. I ensured that the lodge would be a place of respect, kindness, and inclusivity values they had ignored for years. The day they returned for their annual vacation, I was waiting. The same lodge that had once dismissed me as just the housekeeper was now under my influence. I greeted them warmly but firmly, letting them know the new rules. When Diane and Julia arrived, I made them wait 40 minutes in the chilly lobby. Their irritation was palpable, but I held my ground. Finally, I stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry, but this lodge does not welcome those who see others as mere servants." The stunned silence was satisfying. Brian looked at me with a mix of shock and regret, but I didn't need his approval anymore. I had reclaimed my dignity and rewritten my story. The lodge, once a prison of humiliation, was now my domain, and I had to turn the tables in the most perfect way. After the heartbreak and years of struggle, I was determined not to let my past define my future. Leaving Brian was painful, but it was also a turning point, the moment I chose to take control of my own story. I started by focusing on my passion, interior design, especially for mountain lodges and vacation homes. I poured my heart into building a small business, taking every job I could find. It wasn't glamorous work at first, but it was honest. Slowly, I built a reputation for quality and creativity. Clients trusted me, and my portfolio grew. But beyond just surviving, I was preparing for something bigger. I kept close tabs on the lodge where Brian's family vacationed every year, the place that had become a symbol of my humiliation. I knew it was owned by several shareholders, including Brian's mother. Rumors circulated that one shareholder was ready to sell, frustrated with the lodge's outdated management and toxic family control. When I learned about the opportunity, I saw my chance. I began networking, meeting investors, and securing loans. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. I was no longer the powerless wife. I was a businesswoman with a plan. During this time, Brian and I had minimal contact. I stayed focused, blocking out the past pain and channeling my energy into growth. I attended workshops on business management, property acquisition, and hospitality. I read everything I could about the resort industry, turning knowledge into power. After months of negotiation, I secured enough capital to buy a significant share in the lodge. The transaction was discreet. I didn't want Brian's family to know who was behind the new ownership. It was crucial for the element of surprise. With my shares, I gained a voice in lodge operations. I pushed for professionalism, respect, and fairness values the old owners had neglected. I implemented new policies that focused on guest experience and staff dignity. The lodge slowly transformed into a place of warmth and respect, shedding the toxic legacy of Brian's family's entitlement. The real test came the following year during the family's annual vacation. They expected the usual royal treatment. Instead, I was waiting for them at the front desk, confident and in charge. Their names were flagged in the system, and I delayed their check-in for 40 minutes. Diane's expression darkened with confusion and anger. Julia's usual smirk faltered. Brian was speechless. When I finally appeared to greet them, I was calm but firm. I'm sorry, but this lodge no longer tolerates those who see others as mere servants, I said. We value respect here. The room fell silent. Diane's lips pressed into a tight line. Julia's eyes flashed with fury. Brian looked away, unable to meet my gaze. This moment was more than a simple power play. It was justice. Karma finally caught up with them. The family that had belittled me for years was now subject to the rules I set. I didn't gloat. I simply upheld the standards I believed in. The lodge became a sanctuary where respect and kindness prevailed. Brian's family had lost their place of entitlement, and I had taken back my dignity. In the months that followed, I expanded my shares, further strengthening my influence. I built a team that shared my vision of hospitality with heart. The lodge's reputation soared, attracting guests who appreciated the care and warmth we provided. Brian eventually reached out, but I was no longer the vulnerable woman he once knew. I had transformed my pain into power, my heartbreak into success. Owning part of the lodge was more than a business victory. It was a personal triumph, a reminder that I was worth more than the cruel labels they placed on me. I had rewritten my story. From just the housekeeper to a proud owner, I had proven that with resilience, determination, and vision, karma can be more powerful than vengeance. A few weeks after their humiliating visit, I received a handwritten letter postmarked from Brian's mother. It was short, bitter, defensive, saying they had never intended to offend, and that everything had been misunderstood. She asked if for old time's sake I could make an exception next year. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The lodge no longer needed people like them to thrive. In fact, the new management style had attracted a wave of guests who appreciated not only the charm of the Rockies, but also the warmth and dignity of the people behind it. We had waiting lists in peak season. Word spread fast when you ran a place where kindness wasn't optional. It was policy. I spent more time on site now mentoring younger women entering the hospitality world. Many had stories like mine overlooked, underestimated, silenced. We built a community within those lodge walls, not just a business, something meaningful. One snowy evening, I walked alone through the main hall, now redesigned with clean pine accents, cozy lighting, and artwork from local women artists. I paused by the fireplace where Brian's family had once taken their perfect holiday photo, the one they deliberately left me out of. This time, the wall held a new photo, my team arm in arm smiling in the snow staff and guests together. No one was excluded. No one was diminished. I stood there for a moment, then whispered to myself, not with bitterness, but with quiet triumph. They wanted a housekeeper, I became the owner. And just like that, the past no longer hurt because I had turned it into something powerful, something no one could ever take from me again.